Hi guys, it's Mark from TST. Now it's been a while since I've had anything AMD on the channel, and finally I get my hands on an RX 480, but not just any RX 480, even better than that, probably one of the best on the market, the ASUS STRIX OC version. The OC version is ASUS's top dog in the RX 480 lineup, shipping out the door with a clock speed of 1310 MHz, but with a press of a button from GPU Tweak 2 it boosts all the way up to 1330 MHz. So it's going to be interesting to see how far I can overclock this card, but more importantly how it performs in the latest games with some epic benchmarks. If we take a closer look at the card, you'll see similarities with it and all the other Strix branded cards released this year, featuring the Direct CU3 cooler. If you want to hear more detail about the Direct CU3 cooler's design, then please go check out my Strix 1080 review where I go into more detail, and a link will be in the description. But personally I think ASUS has made a great decision keeping the same design, because it allows budget builders the chance to have a fantastic looking card at a much cheaper price. The card still features all of the RGB lighting found on the higher end models like the GTX 1080, including the infamous ROG logo, which is strangely absent from the Strix 1060, so AMD fans are getting zero shortcomings regarding aesthetics. The card is also super long, measuring in at nearly 12 inches. Most cards come in unfortunately a lot shorter than that, which I always found made my PCIe cables run off at an unsightly angle. So let's run through the specs of the Strix RX 480. It features, as previously mentioned, a boost clock of 1310 MHz, and that's in gaming mode, and 1330 MHz in overclock mode. It comes with 8GB of GDDR5 memory and a 256-bit memory interface. It also has 2304 shader units, and lastly the card has Crossfire support straight from the motherboard directly, so there's no need for Crossfire connectors, unlike the Strix 1060 that has no SLI support whatsoever. Jumping around to the back of the card, it has a wide arrangement of connections. It has two HDMI 2.Bs, two DisplayPort 1.4s, and a dual link DVI port. For power, the Strix RX 480 uses a single 8-pin connector, so you won't get any of the problems like was seen from the reference design regarding excessive power draw over the motherboard, although that was apparently fixed with a driver update from AMD. But just like the Strix 1080, 1070 and 1060, the RX 480 Strix features two PWM fan connectors, so you can connect up your system fans directly to the GPU. It allows for your fans connected to ramp up when the GPU temperatures do, as opposed to just connecting them up to your motherboard. Pricing, the RX 480 comes in at £299.99 in the UK and $299.99 in the US, and around €350 in Europe. So it only comes in a little bit cheaper than the Strix GTX 1060, at least in the UK, but it just so happens that I've reviewed the Strix 1060 earlier on in the year, so it's going to be interesting to see how it performs later in those benchmarks. Overclocking the Strix RX 480, I used Heaven Benchmark and then later tested in several games. I managed to reach a core clock of 1375 MHz and a memory core clock of 2010 MHz, so it wasn't really worth overclocking the memory at all, but it was definitely worth bumping up the core. The whole time during gaming, the Strix RX 480 never reached a temperature higher than 68 degrees. Noise under load, I found the card fairly quiet, but this is how it sounds. Now onto the benchmarks. The Strix RX 480 will be up against some pretty stiff competition from Nvidia, especially going up against the Strix GTX 1060, which only comes in at £20 UK more. So let's jump straight into the benchmarks and see how it performs.
Disturb the sound of silence.
Okay guys, the RX 480 did not do too badly at all, especially when running games with Vulkan or DirectX 12 enabled, and it's great to see it put out so much performance in games that supported DirectX 12 especially. So what card should you pick up, the RX 480 or the GTX 1060? Well, that definitely depends on what games you play and if they have DirectX 12 or Vulkan support. But with more and more games being released supporting those APIs, the Strix RX 480 could turn out to be a bit of a bargain in the future, especially since it has crossfire support and the GTX 1060 doesn't support a two-way card configuration, or aka SLI. Rounding off now with a summary and the final score, the ASUS Strix RX 480 is going to have to get a 9 out of 10. It's the first card I've tested that gave me a glimpse of the future with DirectX 12 support, and I was extremely impressed. Also, the fact that ASUS has included the cooler, the backplate and all of the RGB lighting from the 1080 and the 1070, it's fantastic, and overall it makes the ASUS Strix RX 480 well worth the 9 out of 10 with the Totally Silenced Gold Award. But anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've been Marcus from Totally Silenced Tech. Goodbye.